哎呦，今天这个党委会开会的地点比较上档次啊，比上一次好多了。上一次有点忒寒碜了啊，有点忒寒碜了。
Ladies and gentlemen, if you could take your seats, please, we're going to get started. Good morning. My name is Frank Gaffney. I'm wearing several hats today. I'm the president of the organization, executive chairman of an organization called the Center for Security Policy. I am also the president.
他就是 Frank Gaffney， 他就是这个安全的一个主席和创始人啊，就是这个叫 Frank 的家伙。
The Committee on the Present Danger, China. I wanted to say just a few words of introduction.
就是做一些介绍了，开幕式的介绍了。
Before, let me say thank you to all of you who are here, and thank you to those of you who are now taking part in this important program via live streaming.
做一些这个热场的这个感谢啊，就是前排后排的一并感谢一下。
Other members of the media who are here, I'm very pleased to say, in force. I want to say a word of thanks in sort of general to the terrific team of speakers that we have pulled together for you. Many of them have come from some distance, and they're going to make it worth your while. I'm quite confident.
这老哥们儿说话一句话都不停的啊，没法办。
It will be a series of relatively brief remarks, and then we will do some question and answer for any one of them.
他就是说每个人先轮流发言，最后做一个 Q&A 啊，就做一个观众的解答，问题解答。
For those of you who have as much gray hair as I do, you may remember the previous incarnations of this group. It came together initially in the 50s, and then.
现在讲一下这个党委会的历史啊，说成立于50年。
There was a subsequent effort made in the post-9/11.
然后又成立在2001年以后，这个911以后又成立过第3次。
The middle of those three groupings, it was. At a time when the Soviet
讲一下这个大背景，就是主要是这样是针对那个苏联的啊，苏联的。
explicitly seeking the destruction of this.
因为当时苏联是主要想毁灭美国嘛。想到了里根总统啊，就决定去阻止苏联的这个毁灭性的行动啊。
1970s, of course, he was no longer the governor of California, and he was not yet the president of the United States, but he saw very clearly the present danger that China represented, and he became a member of a group of national security experts.
他应该现在介绍那个叫 Roger Robinson 的这个人啊。
Specialists, activists, and others who were similarly minded about the importance of countering what the Soviet Union was doing. Vis-a-vis the United States and around the world. This group actually helped develop, I think it's fair to say, Reagan's thinking, certainly his strategy for defeating the Soviet Union, which became a centerpiece of his platform in his campaign for the presidency in 1980.
就是说这个
He subsequently tapped some of his fellow members of the Committee on the Present Danger to help him execute the strategy that they devised for not simply containing or countering the Kremlin, but actually defeating the USSR. I'm very pleased, and I'll say a bit more about him in a moment, that one of our speakers...
Roger Robinson， 他就是说在1980年的时候，他协助这个里根总统，然后组建了这么一个小组，专门针对那个苏维埃的这么一个小组吧。
We believe that the United States faces a similar, indeed a much more dangerous, totalitarian communist regime, led by the Chinese Communist Party, presided over at the moment by Xi Jinping.
习近平领导的这个中共是一个独裁集权体制。
An entity that has for decades actually been at war.
所以在几十年里，其实在中国、美国进行一些战争。
Unbeknownst to most of us, I fear most especially perhaps people in the
实际上，
business
他说的就是中共进行的一个经济战略啊，经
So
济
we've
战。
come together as a pickup team, if you will.
因为这次这个会议的主要的题目就是这个
Specialists
抵
on
抗
China,
中共的这个
business
经济
leaders
朝
who
鲜
some
战
we'll be
啊。
hearing from this morning, as well as human rights and religious freedom activists and others, for the purpose of, most importantly, exposing the true character of the Chinese Communist Party and its agenda, and helping Americans and others
这次会议呢，就是让美国人了解中共的真相啊，
indeed growing
然后有
danger.
些意识到他对
Not
美
just in
国
terms of our business
和世
interests,
界的威
not
胁。
just in terms of our geostrategic interests more broadly, but to the very existence of the United
这不仅
States.
是关系美国的地域利
We're
益，
going
而
to
更关
discuss
系到美国的
specifically
生死存亡
today
啊。
how that's manifesting itself in the
经
economic
济战略里面，
battle space. A number of the people who will be presenting are deeply
今天
knowledgeable
讲话的
about
这些人
that,
都在经济领域非常
writing,
资深，
working on warning about this
在
problem.
很多年里都意识到这
I
个问
couldn't be
题
more，proud
都
that they
在
have
宣
pulled
传这个
together
问题。
with us to try to help those of you here, those of you joining us virtually, and millions of Americans outside of this immediate conversation to know what we're up against, and as importantly, to understand what we can do about
主要就是
this
说
present，danger.
我们
That
想
is
知
our
道
mission.
中国这次会
It
议我们应该
is
做些什么
laid out in a
能
brief
够
statement,
进行反击啊。
along with some guiding principles that are at your place settings. I commend it to you. It's the common platform that we've pulled together behind and that we're going to be working to advance. Also on the table is a list of the current membership of the Committee on the Present Danger. I think
他说每个人的桌子上
impressed
都有一
by
个
the
委员会的
caliber
成
of
员
the
的名
people
单。
that are currently working with us, and more are coming online each day. There's also a statement that we issued about a month ago now at the launch of this effort. And by the way, if you're interested in getting a sort of preliminary exposure to the kinds of issues we'll be talking about a lot, the launch event was terrific. We had 21 members of the committee presenting in 4-minute increments descriptions of the threats as they see them from their particular areas of expertise. It's fascinating. It's all available at presentdangerchina.org.
他现在
As
介绍
is
这
the
个网
launch
站
event, the launch of this
，presentdangerchina.org。
series of roundtable discussions in Washington about 2 weeks ago, featuring one of our guests here today, Steve Bannon. We also had Newt Gingrich, Ted Cruz, Representative Chris Stewart, and others. I want to simply say this is a resource we hope you will be continuing to tap. I hope you'll find this morning's program describing the economic warfare battle space, what the Chinese are up to in it, and most especially what we can do to thwart them in their design against us, to be of very great use to you and hopefully help us make some important course corrections as a nation. Our first speaker is going to be Roger W. Robinson. Roger is one of the heroes, as I mentioned, of the struggle with the
Roger 是我
Soviet
的英
Union.
雄，他是
Largely unsung
他
hero
是这
at
个
that,
幕
but
后的一个
nonetheless he's going on
对
from
抗苏
there
联的一个
as
主要
a
的
senior
设计师
director for international economic
灵魂性的人
affairs
物。
in the National Security Council
在里根总统的时候，任这个
to launch
里根政府里
his
面
own
国家安全委员会
company,
一个非常重要的
RWR
负责经济和
advisory
金
group.
融方面的一个
He
策
has
略
also
策略
served
制
as the
作师
chairman
architect
of the Congressional
建筑师相当于这个总设计师吧。
Economic and Security Commission, an incredibly important institution for sort of second opinions on what's going on with the Chinese, especially under his.
他在2001年到2006年期间也任职这个中美经济回顾委员会的一个成员，所以他对中国的经济还是比较了解的。这个 Roger 这个人。
He is speaking to us today in that capacity. Roger Robinson, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Frank. It's always a privilege to be with the home team. So many recognizable faces from decades of being in the national security space, and it's just a real pleasure to be back with Frank and the team. I would we're a little bit constrained on time, and so I'm going to try to move through quite a lot in a short period of time. But as Frank mentioned, we're looking at the economic and financial dimensions of China's hybrid warfare activities directed toward the United States and its allies.
中国对中美国和邻盟有进行的经济和金融方面的一些这个超限战。
Made in China 2025. And as we've gone through step by step, examining these initiatives more carefully, we found that, of course, they're absolutely chock-a-block with strategic content. Indeed, the notion that these are benign commercial development projects is luckily been largely debunked. And we're dealing with a very ambitious and sometimes insidious set of efforts. We took it upon ourselves to try to look at this in a more granular fashion. And about 7 years ago, our firm, and I am representing the Prague Security Studies Institute today. RWR is more of an impartial data provider. But that said, we took it upon ourselves to try to track every Chinese transaction outside of China globally on a daily basis. And that data now goes back some 6 years. These are not just being tracked, they're being visually mapped.
这两个机构都属于一些这个咨询顾问团，还有一些智库一样的性质。现在正在展示这个针对中共经济侵略的这个数据分析吧。
A global footprint as it exists today, and I mean up to the date. So it gives you just a quick visual image of where those the
这里面这个标题就是中国全球交易的脚印和足迹啊，所有的这个蓝色的点都是中国经济的这个活动出现的区域啊。
For example, we were the first company some 4 or 5 years ago to identify every Chinese state-owned enterprise doing business in the South China Sea. In the building of the illegal islands,
讲到中国在南海建立的非法岛礁。
and when you look at not just the parent companies, but their networks of subsidiaries, and take it, you blow out that global footprint of where they are around the world. This is what you.
这个就是他自己的公司啊，叫 RWR 的这个顾问公司的这么一个这个总结的一个数据吧。
And yet, to my knowledge, there's never been one sanctioned by the United States to date. As dangerous a circumstance.
它的下面的一些时间轴啊，它应该是一个可以一个时间轴吧，从多少年看不清，我看不清楚。
Major penalty. Here's what a global footprint of.
第二张是展示这个华为这个公司在全球的这个扩展或者是经济活动的一个足迹，以国家的形式来展示的。
In various countries dictates the size of those bubbles. China Communications Construction Company. This is the largest Chinese entity in Belt and Road.
中国通信建筑公司啊的这个全球扩展的足迹。
They are the dredging company that helped build the islands, and there's a lot of stories about this. They tried to go to the Hong Kong.
说这个中信建筑公司在南美洲啊，在非洲，在 西亚还有南中海区域的那些东南亚国家的紧密吧，还有东澳大利亚也比较多。
Sanctionable. There's legislation for Marco Rubio and others that's pending right now that could sanction. And yet, CCCC, when they were confronted by the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, demurred and said, no, this is the same as Exxon drilling off of New Jersey. There's no controversy here. We're not going to register this as a risk. And finally, with the threat of class action lawsuit, Hong Kong Stock Exchange insisted, and they withdrew the IPO and that $1 billion rather than to have to admit or disclose the fact that they were engaged in disputed, controversial activities. This is important because it gets down to how we're going to help resolve this issue, not just through sanctions, but market principles. I mean, what about disclosure, transparency, proper risk management, good corporate governance, protecting of share value and corporate reputation? These are all market principles and tools that we can effectively use to hold Chinese entities accountable as they don't come in but pour into our.
这里面就是具体讲，不要只单纯对中国的这些有争议的公司进行制裁，同时要用一些比较 market principle， 就比较有知名的一些规则啊，让他们不是要把他们堵在门外，而是让他们进来以后正遵循这些商业规则。这里面讲到在伊朗的这个布局啊，中国公司在伊朗的布局。
And its deliveries of oil, it's the largest taker of Iranian oil.
中国政府的这个公司是伊朗石油的最大的交易成员。
So we're looking at every Chinese company in Iran, all of their subsidiaries, mapping their global footprints, because in the event that the Trump administration should decide to actually do something, namely follow through on its threat of secondary sanctions. You know, where are these companies doing business? What kind of leverage do we have? How many of them are doing business in American cities?
就是说他呼吁这个川普总统对这些中国公司进行第二次的制裁。
These are going to be relevant questions. This is 21st century warfighting. This, in my judgment, is the sixth domain of American warfighting, namely the economic and financial.
美国战争的第六空间啊。
Look for it coming to a neighborhood near you.
在经济上，
You've got air, land,
经济策略上对对方进行制裁。
cyber, space. But where is the area of our single greatest dominance, the economic and financial domain?
就是经济和政治的这个区域啊进行统治。
We haven't exercised a fingernail of our leverage to curtail their predations and their hostile activities directed toward the United States. So that's just a quick look at Intel Track, and there's more to say on that in the way we slice and dice that data. Now, going back quickly, because time is an issue here, to the cap markets, China has over 650 companies in our debt and equity markets today.
中国有大概60万公司啊 ，600,000
Stock Exchange 62 in Nasdaq, well over 500 in the over-the-counter markets.
在美国有500个上市公司，他们在美国基本上没怎么受到很严格的管制，
as little disclosure as
也没有什么透明性。
Now, the alarming part of this is that the pace, the sheer pace of the money we're talking about now, we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars, moving rapidly towards $1 trillion. So we're not talking about a few tens of billions here.
3000亿美元的
hundreds of billions.
3000亿的资金的这个
It raises a question.
流动或者是
Given the fact that the United States has never put up any kind of security-minded screening mechanism over our cap markets, like we have with CFIUS and FIRMA in the trade portfolio, where at least we're making an effort to vet Chinese investment in the United States to find out who these people are, what are their true intentions, do we have a national security threat there that's worthy? Nothing like that's happening vis-a-vis the cap markets, never has, and that's the root of the problem. So in trying to summarize, and we can perhaps return to some of this in the Q's and A's, there are two major new material risk categories that should properly be focused on. One is national security related risk, and the second is human rights related risk.
就讲到两个威胁嘛，一个是国家安全方面的威胁，一个是人权方面的威胁。
Activities as Hike Vision and its surveillance cameras and equipment.
这两个应该都是讲到中共了。总结了一下，快结束了。这个老师快结束了。
Some would say the concentration camps holding a million Uyghurs today.
啊，讲到维吾尔族的事情了。
Indexes like the MSCI Emerging Market Index. It's tracked by $2 trillion of funds under management. It's mimicked by 14 trillion more. Every time they add a Chinese company, and they're doubling the number in the next 12 months, as much as $16 trillion automatically buy those stocks. Now, you know, some of these companies are major national security and human rights abusers. Take, as I say, Hikvision on the human rights side, China Unicom, AVIC, China Shipbuilding. In other words, when you look at these companies, and I wanted to describe some of what they do, but I'm already getting the sign here.
小天，能不能尽量说完整句，然后尽量同时翻译啊？我要打字到那。
Perhaps we can return to who these folks are, but let me assure you that those profiles.
这个很难，这个绝对不可能的，这个，因为他这个，他说话的语速根本没法连上，他一段一句的把是可以的。
And they are bad actors in the eyes of those who care about.
没事，你就尽量多说话。
So I will leave you with there at this time, but leave it to say that we have a real opportunity here if we're prepared to mobilize. Remember, this is your money. All of us are in the markets. I don't know how many millions, hundreds of millions of Americans, 180, 200 million Americans have portfolios. We've looked at the public pension systems. We've looked at the mutual funds, the index funds, and so forth. It's not pretty. So wittingly or unwittingly, you're holding bad actors in portfolio. So I'll just leave you with the notion that we all have a right and a responsibility to take action here and call for the kind of disclosure that we need to know as prospective investors. I mean, that's the very least that can be done. And that's not a huge claim. I mean, that's not a huge ask, after all. We're not talking sanctions and market restrictions and trying to damage the competitiveness of our exchanges and all that Wall Street's going to come after us with as they fearmonger you away from this topic. We're looking at disclosure, transparency, market principles, and if we stick with that, it's a very strong suit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Roger. I should have noted for this audience in particular that in a previous incarnation, Roger was a vice president and special assistant to the chairman of the board of a company here in town, as I recall, Chase Manhattan Bank, before he went into the administration of Ronald Reagan. Thank you. The unenviable task I have is trying to truncate a whole series of presentations that I would love to have go much longer, as I know would you, but we will have some time if we're disciplined to actually engage in a bit of Q&A. Next up, I'm very pleased to have a friend and colleague of many years as well, Gordon Chang. Gordon is well known, I'm sure, to this audience and many others besides from his myriad appearances as one of the country's real duty experts on Asia, specifically on China, is the author of 3 terrific books, The Coming Collapse of China being particularly relevant, also Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World, and most recently, Losing South Korea. He's a contributor to the Daily Beast, and I'm pleased to say to my radio programs, Gordon Chang, where are you? Come forth. Thank you very much. He's going to talk about... We've asked Gordon to talk a little bit about unrestricted warfare, a term that's in the title of this program, and how it applies in the space, notably in the Belt and Road Initiative. Thank you. Gordon.
没有讲 Gordon Chang 讲3本书，中国的崩塌，这是一个比较资深的一个媒体人，专门是反攻的一个人。
一句一句的轮流翻译。
我们只能就是。
And free societies everywhere. It is truly an honor for me to be here today.
我很荣幸今天能到这边来，非常感谢。
As Frank mentioned, China is
像 Frank 刚才讲的，中国用超限战来对付美国， 并且它有多边性、多元性、技术、理想方面、思想方面，而且政治方面。就像 Roger 刚才讲的那样，当“一带一路”刚开始的时候，然后中国向欧洲那边发展，并且对沿路进行扩张，所以我们知道中国的计策是全球性的，而且不光是经济方面的，他们的这种争斗是不光是为了加强他们的经济。当初苏联的时候，他们的看上去很强大，苏联当时，但是现在也像重蹈覆辙一样。中共正在增强势力。他们很有自信，现在更加的蛮横无理，追求全球霸权。那他们现在的对付他们的方法是超越他们，就是在发展中超越他们。这是我们的这是我们的一种机会，来规划我们的未来，来击败中共。美国拯救了中共好几次，在尼克森总统的时代，那个时代他们说对美国是有利的，就是拯救中共，因为那时候有冷战，并且89年以后，我们也拯救了一次中共。在天安门屠杀之后，克林顿总统他在99年的时候开始了给他们 WTO 优惠国待遇。那现在，习近平是世界上最危险的人物。那统计说，中国的经济增长是6%以上，但是这是流水分的数字。其实也有人说，其实它的增长率才有1.几，甚至是负的。这可能听上去更真实。在3月份，他们的经济有一些增长，因为他们增多了借贷，因为这些借贷使得表面上看起来经济有所增长，但是呢，也就那么好那么1-2个月吧。他们好像现在是高于平常5倍的速度，在目前来说，是因为这种大量的借贷造成的，这并不是一个好的征兆。第一，北京从来没有遵守过他们在贸易上的承诺。为什么我们要解决这样问题，用更多的承诺呢？因为他们根本不可能承诺。说第二点，为什么还要继续跟他们谈判呢？因为越跟美国、跟中国谈判越多，美国的公司在中国的投资 越多，那美国的经济就对中国就更有那个弱点。
It's not going to do our companies any good
所
because Xi
以
Jinping has been hostile to foreign companies.
这种谈判对
Xi Jinping
美国的公司并没有什么利，
decade
因
has
为
been
习
reversing
近
reform,
平一直在走倒退的，
When you increase the power of the state, you make it much more
就
difficult
在
for
倒退的
foreign
路上
companies to
走。
prosper. And we've seen this with something that Roger mentioned, which is the
刚
Made
才
in China 2025
习
program.
近平又推出了2025 计
Fourth,
划，
Xi Jinping does not
习
believe
近
in the
平
legitimacy of the
并不
Westphalian International
承
system.
认这个
For more than a
西
decade,
法
he's
利
been
亚
dropping hints that
Westphalia 这
China
个
is the
treaty
world's only
这个
sovereign
协
state.
议
So what's the
是
point
有
of
关
helping
主
somebody who
权、
actually
尊重
believes
主权
this?
的这个
And
公
fifth,
约。
China has been using the proceeds of commerce with the U.S.
中
to
国
expand their
用
military, while their
贸
senior
易
officers have
中的
openly
顺
been
差
talking about
来
killing Americans.
对付美
Twice
国，
in December,
并且
a
要
senior officer of the
伤害
People's
美国。
Liberation Army urged in public unprovoked attacks on the U.S.
他
Navy
们
and
的
the
军
global
人
commons.
经常公开
In
的
the second of these
宣
outbursts, which occurred on the
叫
20th, a rear admiral said
进
that China
攻
should
美
use its
国，
Dongfeng 21D and
而
Dongfeng
且
26
说要用
missiles
东
to
风
sink 2 aircraft carriers and
21
kill 10,000 Americans.
这些导弹，还有
This
用美
statement
国
is not
用中国的
official
军
policy
人
of Beijing.
来
Nonetheless, it is believed to reflect
对
thinking
付
in
美
the
国
senior
的
ranks of the
航空
Chinese
母舰之
military.
类。
So why should we help this
所以我们
admiral's
为什么
colleague
要
in this
帮助这
particular
些
circumstance? And let's remember, the
中
Chinese
国这
have
些
gone
鹰派的军人
beyond
呢？
just talking about
这种反美的军人呢？
Last May, the Wall Street Journal reported
上个
that
月
China lasered a U.S. C-130 from their overseas
纽约
military base in
是
Djibouti, injuring 2 pilots.
华尔街日报
You
说，
injure 2
美国
pilots,
军人
you
用
have to assume that they're trying to bring down the plane. If
用
you're
激
trying to
光
bring
伤
down
害
the
了
plane, you're
美
trying to
军
keep
的
it
飞
through.
行员的视
We
力，
also learned that last spring,
并且
China
上
caused
个
brain
去
injuries to
年
our diplomats in the Guangzhou consulate.
春天，他们
So,
也
how
把
are we
我们
maintaining
在
cordial
广州
relations with
的
this country?
外交人员
What should we
的
do on trade?
脑部造成损伤。
Well, first of all, I think that President Trump should cancel the
我
tariff
认为
increase reprieve that he granted in February. I also think that we should
川
increase the
普
tariffs beyond that 25%, and we should
应
ban
该
the importation of goods
增
into
加
the United States that have
20%
benefited from the theft of U.S.
更多
intellectual
的
property,
税，
and we should
对
ban the
中国的产
importation
品
of goods
加更
sold by any
多的
company
税，
that has stolen American IP.
并且还要制裁那
We
些
can do this.
盗窃美
Many
国
people say that we can't, but we got to remember
经济
that last year,
产权的
China's
中国公
merchandise trade
司，
surplus with the United States
并且
accounted for 129.6% of its overall merchandise surplus. 129.6%.
说对美
So
国的
China's
顺差
overwhelming dependence on the U.S.
占
gives
了他们
President Trump extraordinary
100%
leverage
多
over the
的
Chinese.
这种
Now, most everyone believes that the United States and China cannot
经
separate
济
their economies.
的收入，
But
所以
Chinese
他们
leaders are
大
concerned about it.
非常
Premier Li Keqiang
依赖
at
于
his
美
once-a-year
国，
press conference in March
在
of
经
this
济上
year
非常依
said,
赖
look,
于美
the
国，
decoupling of U.S. and China
所以
is neither realistic nor possible.
但是
If it's not possible,
很多人
then why
说
is he talking about it?
中美的这些
Will
分
disengagement hurt
离
us? Yes, of course.
会伤害美
But
国
we've，got to remember that we're
是
already
不可能的。
suffering grievous wounds. Each year, China steals hundreds of
会
billions of
伤
dollars
害
of
吗？
U.S. intellectual
但是我
property.
们
Some
目
people
前已
say
经
it's only
正
150
在
billion.
遭
Other
受
people
伤
say
害，
600
所以
billion.
这种
But whatever
经济
it
上
is,
的
it's
剥
much too
离，
large. We have an innovation-based economy. If
并
we
不一
could
定
not
说造成
commercialize
更多
our
的伤害
innovation,。
我们的
we do
经
not
济
have
是以
the
创新
economy
为
of the
主
future.
的，
The one thing that disengagement will do is it
这
will
这种
decrease the
分离
opportunities for Chinese parties
会
to
让
steal U.S. IP.
中国有更少
I
的
can
机会来盗窃
understand
我
the
们的
motivations for the Chinese to steal, but what I can't understand
技
is
术。
why we as a nation have let them do it.
我们作为一个
So, ladies
国
and
家
gentlemen,
给他们
this
机
is on
会
us.
来盗窃我们
We
的
need to disengage. We need to
技术
disengage now.
我们
I
必
not
须
only say
跟
no
中
trade
共
deals with
分离，
countries that want
我
to
们
kill
必须
Americans.
现
I
在开
say
始分离，
also no trade with them at all.
因
And
为他们
my
想
God,
伤害
we
我，
should not
我
rescue
们
Chinese communism
应
again.
该不应该再跟他们做
Thank you.
交易，我们不应该再一次 拯救中共。好，谢谢这位发言人 Gordon Chen。
Thank you very much for
结束。
very important messages on several fronts.
谢谢您发表的这项重要的演讲。他刚才讲，中共的鹰派军人叫嚣攻击美国军舰。
Next up, I'm very pleased to
下
say
一
we have one
位
of your own here in
是
the New York financial sector. Kyle
从
Bass,
经济领域来的
who is
Kyle
well known
Bass
for
来
his
了。
acumen,
好，下一位演讲的是
hedge fund
Kyle Bass，
business,
他是
especially,
对
I
冲
think,
基
for the
金
work that he has been
的
doing
负责人，
with respect to China, notably with Hong Kong.
他会
He
讲
is, of course,
有关
the,
中国还有香港的话
financial
题。
investment officer of Heyman Capital Management.
他是
He's also
这个
the
Human
author
Capital
of a
这
new
个公
piece,
司
which
的
he's going
CEO，
to unveil here and make available to those of you whose emails we have about the quiet panic in
并
Hong
且
Kong.
他要讲那种
There you are. Welcome. Come on up.
很安静的恐慌正在香港发生。我非常荣幸能来到这里，有我要开始先评论一下 Roger 刚才讲的。如果看中国的经济，它现在号称说占世界 GDP 15%，所以我们现在都是相信中共的话，这是他们号称的GDP 增长率。但是呢，现在看来中国正有美元的短缺，并且他们正在使劲的印钞票，他们管控自己的媒体，所以他们强力控制他们的经济，但是他们并不能完全控制他们的外汇储备。他用在香港上市公司来圈美元。现在大家就开始看到，他们借了很多的美元，他们公司的借贷非常的高，因为你看那个《华尔街日报》上讲的，所以他们的这个借贷率有非常非常的高，而且很多美国的退休资金都投在这上面，而且他们的公司发表了看上去很棒的财务报告。但是我们经常把这些信以为真。而且我们现在有对伊朗的制裁，我们制裁那些，而且跟那个伊朗做交易的人都会受到制裁。我们能做的一件事情就是美国能做什么呢？就是我们的行动，就是所有的退休基金，就是免税的那些退休基金。美国有规定说，你不能把退休基金投资在这种美国制裁有关的国家或者公司。我们必须让这些退休基金停止向中国投资，因为你如果 违反了这种投资的这种规定，那你们就不再有免税的这种优惠。
And so that should happen. That should be a forced happening, I think, from the perspective of the IRS. Comment real quickly on something Gordon said. He said the strongest economy wins, and I think that's exactly true. And Roger proved through working with the Saudis that you could pump enough oil to get oil to $10 and destroy the Russians. And we all thank you, Roger. But I think looking forward to China, we talk about IP theft, and they've stolen.
伊朗进口石油等等，然而，并且中共还偷窃美国的技术，所以我从来没看见一个美国的公司来正式的起诉这样的技术的盗窃。有关香港，这个是全局中非常重要的一块。其实，香港是中国的一个偷盗美元的一个重要渠道。所以，现在有一个我们把香港现在看着像一个比较宪法独立的、司法独立的地区，而且我们对香港有很多优惠。我们对中国的政策与香港略有不同，所以接下来让我先讲一下香港的经济状况和他们现在的。他们的借贷非常高，他们的经济看上去非常糟。他们说有 GDP 9倍的借贷率。香港原来就是一个中国南部的一个港口。他们过去是占中共的经济比例达到30%，但是 WTO 以后，中共开始在南部沿海开发，那香港就变得越来越不那么重要。你可以看到香港的经济地位如何变化。你看这个蓝条是产品的出口，还有另外一个是服务行业。那以前他们是货物的出口为主，现在是服务的出口更占更多比例，所以他们现在用
From 2008 to today is the largest real estate increase in world history. As you all know,
从2008年到现在，他们经历了有史以来最大的房地产的增长。那现在情况在急转直下，他们的借贷率非常非常高，是 GDP 的300%。你可以看到那些在欧洲面临经济危机的那些国家，他们也是症状就是非常高的借贷率。
are orphan children of British financial whether you're looking at DOD reports or USTR
British depositors. So I think those banks are in a precarious position.
所以你在
This is the key.
看这
So
个
when you run a
跟
currency peg to
美
the
元
US,
的挂钩，
you import our rates.
所以
And
你
then
要跟
to
美
defend
国
that
保
peg, you
持
have
一
to
定
have
的
what we
汇
call
率，你
excess
必须
reserves.
要
Now,
有
this
足
is a
够的
busy
美
chart,
元储
but
备
let。me just put it in perspective. In the last year,
所以
Hong Kong has spent
他们用了
80% of its rainy
80%
day
的外
fund
汇储
defending
备
this
来
peg to the US.
支持
And the only
这
reason
个
pegs work
现
is
在
you
的
have
汇率
synchronicity in
1:8。
economies. Well, now Hong Kong's economy is much more relevant
刚才
to
我
say
讲
China's
了，
economy
说
is much
美
more
国
relevant
中国的
to Hong
大陆
Kong
的
than
经
the
济
US.
对
And
香港
they're
来
spending a
说
lot
更
of the
重
rainy day
要，
fund
相对
trying
于
to
美国
maintain
对
this peg
香
that's
港的影
existed for
响。
36 years. So it's a subset of what's happening in China. China's house
所
is
以
on fire,
大
and now
陆
Hong
的
Kong
经
might
济
need a
增
few
长
fire engines
飞
from China,
速，
and
所
we're
以
not necessarily sure. All of this doesn't revalue. To Gordon's
香
point,
港的
and
经济
thinking
也
back to
是
the fall of
被
the
大陆的
Soviet
经
Union,
济
it looks to us
带起，
like the I don't want to say fraud, but let's say
因为
the
这个
disingenuous nature of the
人民币
exchange
和美
rate
元之
between the
间的
RMB and the USD,
汇
given
率
the fact that China is completely running out
再
of
是
dollars and
加
raising
上
dollars through Hong
香港
Kong,
跟美
and Hong
元
Kong is as
的
levered as it is and running
挂
out of its
钩，
own rainy day
所
funds.
以这就
If
是
you have
成
money
为
invested in Asia,
CCP
I would rethink that, and I'd rethink it very quickly. And if you have Hong Kong dollar deposits, you'd be foolish not to
所
convert
以
them into U.S. dollar deposits because you don't even earn
中共就是
80
利
basis
用
points
这
more
个
in overnight rates. So I think this is multifaceted. You need to think about the
香港
nexus
来
of Hong Kong and China
兑换
economically.
更多的
And
美
then we go to
元，
the
就是一
politics.
个
And I
偷
know
到美元
a
的
lot of
渠
you
道。
here are political animals. So if you've noticed in the last month or so,
所以
China has
上个
actually
月他们
floated a
讲了
proposal through Hong Kong's legislature that
引
says they would
渡
just like to
法， 他们
extrajudicially
说，如
grab
果
people
在
off
街
the
上
streets of Hong Kong.
看到这
If
个
China deems them to be a quote
中共认
fugitive,
为是违
and a
法的，
fugitive
他们
means
就
that
可以
they've
把
broken
这
a
些
law
人引
that
渡
happens
到
to be
大
a
陆。
law in China and Hong Kong. Let's
如
just use
果
murder,
习
for
近
example.
平
If
发
President
表一
Xi
个发布一
issues
个
a
逮捕令，
warrant of arrest
他可以
and
说
calls the Hong Kong
某
police
人
and
在
says, hey, this person XYZ committed murder
中国
in
犯
China and
罪，
he's there
那
in
这个
Hong
人
Kong.
正好
We need you to
在
ship him over to us.
香港，正好在
Hong
香
Kong's
港，
going to be
那香港
obliged to
就
do
会
that without
马
due
上把这
process.
些人
Now,
引渡到
that's not autonomous
大
anymore.
陆，
That
因为
is a breach of the
这是
1992
对那个
agreement that the U.S. has with
89
Hong Kong.
年
It's a
那
breach
个
of the 1984 agreement that the
对
Brits
那个香港
put
回
Hong
归
Kong.
公告的那
And so
个
China,
一个
I
违
believe,
法，
overplaying their hand in a big way in Hong Kong, and I think this
但这些
legislation is about to become law. The most interesting thing about these agreements is the 1992
所以
Hong Kong-U.S.
当
Policy
年
Act is re-ratified
美国
annually by the
跟
U.S. President. The State
香港
Department
之
owes a
间有一
report
个
to the President, and then it's up to the President to decide whether or not
协
Hong Kong
定
is still, quote,
那个时候
autonomous enough for us to give them
美
the
国
status that they
把
currently
香港
have.
看作
So
一个相
given
对
the economic
有
fragility of the region,
相对于
and
主
going
权
back
的
to
国家，
Gordon's point, China's
因
in
为
a
它
really
是
bad place today.
像是
Running out of dollars, slowing
一国
the
两制
economy,
嘛。
and the biggest credit
但是
binge in world
现在
history.
香港
Hong
是
Kong is the most levered developed nation in the world today, and they're running out of dollars. We have them exactly where we
说
want them
现在
right
我
now.
们不应该
We should not sign a trade deal with them. We should go ahead and impose these tariffs and then negotiate something much more meaningful with them
我们
6 months down the road. So I think it pays
香
attention. We
港
need to pay
必须
attention
关注
to
他们的
both the
经济
politics and
和
the
政
economics
治的
of Hong
就
Kong, which
走
for
向。
36 years has been a relatively stable place in Asia, and I
好，
think
谢谢。
going forward, that's actually not going to be the case. So, Frank, thanks for having me.
Next, 下面
Next,
一
to
位
pick up on
将
some of these same points and
继续
expand
这
on them,
些
particularly I'm hoping with respect to the Belt and Road
论点，
Initiative
并
and
且
technology
延伸。
piece of what China's up to and what we need to
让
be
我
doing about it.
介绍一
I'm
下
very pleased
David
to introduce
Goldman，
David Goldman. Again, I think
他
someone
是一
you
位
all are very familiar with. The author of
一个专栏作家，
terrific column at Asia Times, although it's
叫
under his nom de
亚
plume,
洲
Spengler. He is also the author of How
时评
Civilizations Die, and very active in the markets in MicroStrategy
他是一个
LLC, of which he is
好，
one
欢
of
迎
the directors,
David
managing
Goldman，
director. Come on up, David Goldman. Welcome.
谢谢你，非常荣幸能来到这里。
Thank you. It's a great honor to be here.
这就是你刚听到的，就是 血泪的这些控诉。
I think we can describe what we've heard as Churchillian in its feeling, and by Churchillian I mean specific. I refer to Andrew Roberts' discussion of Churchill's view of Asia relative to Pearl Harbor, and I quote from his wonderful new biography. Churchill said, in the event of war, the Japanese would fold up like the Italians because they were the wops of the Far East, end of quote. Of course, then we had Singapore, which is the biggest disaster for British arms in all of history. And
当年在二战之后的影响，
the Chinese as Westerners so often underestimate Asians.
如果再次低估中共，那我们就会重蹈当年在新加坡的覆辙。
Think of the Russians at Port Arthur, the Americans
当年我们
at
有
Pearl Harbor, the
珍珠
Yellow
港
River,
就
British
被
Singapore, and so forth.
日本进攻。
I don't
在
believe
二战的
China's
时候，
economy is in nearly as bad shape as Gordon and others seem to think. There are dozens of firms whose satellite photographs count the number of trucks in parking lots of Chinese factories, interview people on the ground and so forth. I look at these every day.
观察这些中国的经济走向，但是我很关注这些。你会看
By the way, the credit growth, if you simply seasonally adjust the numbers, follows a nice gentle trend upwards. You had a huge spike because of the Lunar New Year. There's no bubble in credit growth in China.
你会有时候看到会有一个突然的上升，这是因为他们春节的关系，就是有关中国的经济走向或者增长。说今年中国的股市涨了37%，我们的股市呢回升了一些。
One of the main reason that U.S. growth has declined is that CapEx is way under anyone's forecast. The main reason CapEx is down.
他现在在分析这个股市，两国的股市。
Other analysts is because since no one knows where global supply chains are going to end up, no one is making outlay decisions.
所以
possible that the trade war has
目前的贸易战对美国的影响，负面影响是看上去似乎大于对中国的影响。 就光从这种表面的这个股市这种走向来看啊，我们停止当年有一阵要停，我们曾要停止对 ZT 让它出口芯片，那个公司就差一点要停产了。
As of December 2018, they were self-sufficient. In other words, an export ban would have no effect on their business except to raise their costs a bit.
日本有一项调查
And the Japanese study just published by Nikkei
华为的
Huawei's handset
芯
chips
片
are equal or
甚至比
better than Apple.
苹果的都会好一
All
些。
we've done is give the Chinese an opportunity to make themselves
这个华为的这个事件，
The Huawei campaign has been, I think, one of the most sorriest episodes in U.S. diplomacy.
美国告诉他的盟友不要用华为的产品，因为他们有后门可以有间谍行为。那有些国家说，还是不听美国，还要继续用华为。 Cisco 原来是市场上的霸主，他们有非常多的现金。华为呢，投资在研究上花了很多的钱，所以现在有的公司越来越多开始用华为的芯片。你们可能对这种产业的政策不感兴趣，但是这个产业政策会影响到你们所有人。
means treating capital-intensive industry as a public
因为
good. In other words, a chip foundry or a steel mill will be subsidized by low interest credit or some other means, the same way that we
芯
subsidize
片作
sports
为一
media
个
or an
大
airport
众的
as a public good.
重要的
This is
产
the
业
Japanese
是
model since the Meiji
得到
Restoration.
政府补
South
助
Korea's
的。
adopted the Taiwanese. The difference is there are 1.5 billion Chinese, and the impact of the Asian model on a country that big on the
所
world
以
economy is enormous.
在
So
现代的
the result is
数字
that
技
all
术
the
中，
elements of the modern digital economy,
这
integrated
个芯
circuits,
片非常
laser-powered
重要。
optical networks, sensors, displays, which were developed in the United States,
那
every
我
one
们
of them, most of them with support from the
很
Defense
多用
Department and
于美
NASA,
国
are now produced
国防的这些芯片都是在海外
America's
制造
shipments of
了。
semiconductors were 25% of the world total in 2011,
我们
and 10% in 2018.
现在可能占
Probably
全
be down
球
to 2%
芯片生产
in the next 5
10%，
years.
再过
Chinese
几年可能
massively
会
invest
下降
in
到
chip foundries,
2%，
Taiwanese
全球的芯片
leap
产
ahead
量
of。Intel in terms
所
of
以你
quality
要是
control.
看
And in terms
未
of the
来
future,
这
if you
个
look at
量子
quantum
计算
computing,
机，
which is probably emblematic of the critical game-changing
中国
technologies, China
花
is
了
spending $11 billion for a single quantum
100
computing
多
facility
亿
in
美元
Hefei.
就在
President
一
Trump
个量子
just
计算
signed
机
a
上。
bill into law in December authorizing $1.2 billion for quantum computing research in the next 5 years.
所以
So
一带一路的目
what
标
is
是
the
什么
point of
呢
the？ Belt and Road Initiative in this case?
所以
China has a demographic problem long
美
term.
国
We
国
studied
防
this in
部
Department of
研究
Defense
过
a
这
few years
个，
ago. The point of Belt and Road,
所以
above all, is to lock into the Chinese system 2 countries with a population of 2 billion people
所以
to give
一
China
一
control
带一
of
路
all the potential
是把
surplus
所
of
有的
labor
这种
in the world, starting with Southeast Asia.
消化所有
The
的
spearhead is
产
Huawei and the
量
telecommunications.
过剩，
Now, I spent some time as an investment banker in
所
China
以
with Huawei calling on
他
foreign
们的
governments. And the message is,
口
let
号
us
就
in,
是
you
让
will
我
be
们
like China.
让中
We'll
共
make you
进
into a
入
little
他们
China.
的
First
市
you get
场，
telecommunications.
他们就会变得
Then you'll
像
bring in Alibaba.
中
You'll
国
get
那么繁
e-commerce.
荣。
So all these people in your hills
所以这些“一带一
are
路”
going
的
to be
国家
working
都
for
会
Chinese
为这个
commercialization.
中国的这
Farmers in
些
northern Thailand are now getting text
贸易
messages from Japanese
而
food processing companies owned by
服务。
Alibaba, telling them what to plant based on big data weather
所以
forecasting
他们
and
也
Alibaba analysis of the
让
food
这
plot.
些沿途的这些农民参与到
Once
这
you
个“一
bring
带一
in
路”的计划
transportation,
中，
communications, you
所以
basically
他们要
lock
把这个
billions of people into a Chinese system controlled by Chinese companies with
沿
Chinese
途的
financing
人群的
run by Chinese
人口
monopolies.
都
This is
并
not
入到
all
他
that
们
far
的
from
经济
us.
版图之内。
Huawei is building the national broadband system in Mexico as we speak.
所以
Forget about the rest of the world. This is on our borders. So this would have gone much further if the Chinese hadn't been
这些
vicious and
这个
competent, greedy, and
“一带一路”会
in
继
many
续
of
下
their
去，
dealings
如果不
with
是
any number
中
of their
国
prospective
做
victims
了
in the Belt and Road Initiative. But I don't think we can count on Chinese
太多
the
的
Chinese not to correct their problems. The Belt and Road Initiative is a huge issue. So what do we do about
太
it?
多的
This is the blood, sweat, and tears part. The trade
对
tariffs
沿
are
途国
simply
家造成
not
伤害的
going
事
to cut
情。
it. Gordon is, I generally agree with him about disengaging, but specifically the way to disengage is we need to
我们
bring
必
the
须把
entire
所有
silicon
的
foundry
硅谷的
business
这些
back to the
产业
United
都
States.
搬
That
回
will
美国
cost，hundreds of billions of dollars. It will be disruptive and difficult, and big
所以
tech
这
in the
些
United
公
States
司
isn't
可
gonna
能
like it.
不太
It's
开
not
心，
gonna
因为
great for
对
their
他
stock
们的
prices.
股价
But
并不
not to
是
control
好消
our
息。
own semiconductor industry is like being a European power in the 19th century that doesn't produce
第
steel
二
for，
我们应
cannons.
该
Secondly, we need to create our own
开始
Belt
自
and Road
我们自己的“一带一路”
competitive initiative in common with the Japanese and
从
South Koreans and others, and offer an alternative to China.
从日本开始，
It would be easy to offer them an
让
alternative.
中国
They
在
won't have to do it
世
in
界上
size
并不是那么
to
受
be
欢迎。
effective. And finally, we need something
我们
like
最大的问
Eisenhower's
题
National
是
Defense Education Act. Our
中
biggest single
共
problem is that China graduates 4 bachelor's degrees in STEM for everyone that we do, and the trend is going against us.
所以中国有很多的人在学习这些。
80% of all doctoral candidates in electrical engineering and computer science in the U.S. are foreign, most of them Chinese.
在理工科的
And what we've
大
done
学
in
生
the，United States is to train a
所以
world-class faculty for Chinese universities. So Chinese students are now not
他们有很多
fewer are applying to American
博
universities.
士生在
Unless
这
we
个
reverse that
理工的这
and
个
build the talent
学
at
习理
home.
工科。
And I would also say we should be organizing a brain drain
如果
of
我们
China's
不
most
在这个
talented.
人才上
We're going to
加强培养自己的
So
人
in
才，
my
我
view,
们
it's
会
fanciful
输
to believe
掉。
that short-term measures can destabilize this Chinese juggernaut. It's going to be difficult and expensive on the scale of the efforts we made to win the Cold War.
这是一个
Missile race with
非
Russia in
常
World War II. It's going to be
代价
difficult,
很
most
大的
assuredly.
一场竞
Thank you very
争，
much.
但是我们必须这么做。谢谢 David Goldman。下一
David
位，
Goldman, thank you very much. Next up, Dan David,
这位
a man
这
who
位
has been
是
active in exposing
是经常
fraud,
揭露中共的
undertaken
骗
by the
局。
Chinese, part of
他
a film called The China
制作了
Hustle, in which he is a
这
lead
个
protagonist, focuses on this.
纪录
His
片
company,
叫《
Geo
中国骗
Investing,
局
has
China
itself
Hustle》。
uncovered some $15 billion worth of such malpractice. And
他
he bills himself and is
并
most
且
welcome
是
here as a champion
呼吁
of
这
free
个
speech.
言论
We are
自由。
very pleased to be able to exercise
好，让我们
on
欢
this
迎
occasion with
下
his
一
help.
位。
Dan, welcome.
谢谢你们邀请我到这边来。
So thank you all for having me here.
我想重复我过去10年所说的话。我不知道怎么我会到这里来。我就是一个很平凡的人，非常非常平凡。从密歇根来的，是来自一个劳工家庭。所以让我来告诉你这个我的故事。我是谁，就是有关你的故事。所以开始于2008年，可能你们知道这是一个经济有经济问题的那一年。我那时候看到在2009年在中国的机会，所以我们就投资很多，几乎达到80%，而且我们的盈利有200%以上。然后2010年，有人开始发现这些中国的这些公司有很多欺诈行为。所以我们必须发现到底这些中国公司是怎么回事，所以我们雇了一些人到中国去实地调查。他们告诉我们，他们欺骗到处存在。他说，公司就在一个农村里，然后他们用他用这个汽车把人运到这个公司，让人看起来这个公司有很多的员工。等这些调查人离开，他们这些工人也就离开了，并且我们发现了很多这种情况，一遍又一遍的发生。所以他们就是把
and expose
所以
$15 billion in
有一
fraud.
这些公司就
And that's what all of you can do.
在美国的这个上
Once you
市
set your
不
mind
在
to it, once you see
就
where it's
是
at.
不在美
And I
国
will
挂
tell
牌
you
上
right
市了，
away
就
that when
从
our researchers came back and said that fraud is out in the open, our first
美国的这
inclination
个证
wasn't
券
to
交
be
易所
short.
拿下去了。
I went to the exchanges and I said, this is what's happening. They said, get out of here.
现在没有声音了。
I went to the investment banks. I said, you should hire us to do your due diligence because we're obviously better at it than you are. And you're taking 10% transaction fees representing frauds. They said, you want us to pay you not to collect fees?
还是没有声音。
Because if you come back and tell us they're a fraud, we can't collect the fee. Get out of here. We're going to sue you. After being told this enough times, we left, we published our reports, and we started crashing billion-dollar companies. And the investment banks kept their promise.
好，我到
Of course. And
别的地方。
again, I don't know how I got here, but it starts with a $247 million lawsuit. Now, I don't care how tough you think you are and what you think you've done when you've crashed a billion-dollar company. When a $247 million lawsuit lands on your desk, you get a lump in your throat. It's tough. Thank God it was that much money. If it would have been $10 million, then I had to think about it. But for $247 million, I dug my feet in. And we fought and we won. Why? Because we have something, I have something, as a low-born, average citizen, that you
因
don't
为
have in
我这么一个
Freedom of
出
speech.
生于底层的人，
And we stick it to
我
it with the
有
freedom of speech.
言论自
We
由，
go at them with the freedom of speech.
所以我们
That's right.
就用这个言论自
They
由
can't do
这
it,
个
we can do
来
it.
揭
I
露
was
他
the
们
first
的
short
谎
seller,
言。
I guess that's what I am now, own it, to go to Hong Kong and deliver a short report on
所以
stage at the Sohn conference. Yes, I had my plane ticket
我
in my
去
pocket
香
and
港
left 2 hours after
来
the
告诉
presentation.
大家
Because I'll tell you, to Kyle's point,
揭露这个
it is not one
中国
country,
公
two
司的
systems
骗
anymore.
局，
I've been there over the last 4 years, and now
并
I'm
且
telling
我
you,
告
at
诉
most,
那边的人，
it is
香港的人，
one
这
country,
不
one and a
再
half
是一国
systems,
两
and I
制了，
believe it is one country.
这只是
I had dinner with a Hong
我
Kong
认为现
regulator
在就是一个
the
国
night
家
after
一种
my
制
second
度。
speech, and I said, look, you know the company I presented on is a fraud.
你知
They're
道，
300 miles away from here right
他
now.
们
You
中
can go
国的很多
see
公司
what I
是有
said
欺诈
and
行
what I
为
showed you in
的，
my presentation. He said, no, I can't.
所以你可以
So
看
when
到
China
我
wants something from Hong Kong, they remind us we're one
显示的
country.
证据。
When Hong Kong wants
所
something
以
on a
香
China-based
港让我
company,
们
they
意
remind us
识
we're
到
two，systems.
其实他们就是一个
And that's
国
how it
家。
works with them now. But you have to
但是
understand,
呢，他们
we
在
have to
香港
call out
上
the
市呢，
truth.
这些公司
I went to Congress
让人以为这
and I
是两种
spoke to
制度，
Congress.
其实不是这样
15 of our
子。
representatives in
我
Congress and in the Senate.
到
And I came home, my
国
wife
会
asked me,
去，
what did you learn? That many of our members of Congress are really dumb.
但是我们那
And
些
that is funny
国会的
because
人
it is，so
他们
true.
并不了解
I,
这
as a
些
citizen,
具
go
体
down there
的
and say, look,
真相。
here's a fact.
我
It's
特别的
not
公民，
illegal
我
in China
到
to steal from an
国
American
会那
citizen.
边，
To this
你知
day.
道吗？告诉他们，你知道
And I
吗？
remember
作为中
members
国
of
人
Congress are like,
到
what?
美国来偷盗，并
Oh,
不
okay.
是
I'm
违
telling you
反
this.
中国的法律，
You're in Congress and you don't know. No, they don't
所以
know.
我现在，
They didn't know.
但
And
是
then
他
they
们并
started
不知
asking
道，
me, what should we do about it?
然后他们开始问我，
I
我
said,
们
I
该
should
怎么
go to
做
my
呢？
congressman. That's what I'm doing right now.
我说
You're asking me
我
what
应
we
该
should
去
do
找
about
我
it.
的国
So
会
the
议员，
next year, I went down there
但
with
是
a
你
plan.
问我，作
Okay,
为
they
国
want
会，
to
你又
know
问我
what
你
should we
该
do
怎么
about
做
it?，I said nuclear option, delist them all.
然后他又
Of
问，
course, we can't do that.
那你说干脆就把他们都
If you're going
从
to
那
call the
个
market
证
a
券交
buyer
易
beware
拿下去？
environment, it says
当然
on
我
a
不
pack
能
of cigarettes, if you
立刻
smoke
这么
these
做，
enough, they'll kill you. How about you put a little
所以我们这
asterisk
个香烟
next to
上
the
都
ticker
有
symbol of these companies
警
and
告
pull it down and say, hey,
和
by
对
the way,
健康的
if
警
this
告。
executive
那
steals all
现
the
在
assets
我
of
们
this
应该
company,
做
which they've done hundreds of times now, to the tune of over
做
$100
同样
billion,
的事，来
they're
警
not
示大
prosecutable.
家这些中国
Just make investors aware. They're
公
not
司的
prosecutable if they steal all your money.
危险性。
No.
他们就是来偷你们的钱。
Why?
那也不能做，
China
为什么
is
呢？
buying our freedom of speech.
因为中国买通了收买了我们的言论自由。我们不能控制他们的媒体，但是他们可以控制我们的媒体。这就是当你评论中国的公司，好像我们就是有种族歧视。
Again, what do you have against China? I don't have anything against China.
他们总说，哎，
I have something against
你为什么反中？
And I
我
point
说
this
我
out to all
没有
of us
反
here.
中，
A
我就
Chinese
想
chicken farmer
告
doesn't
诉
wake
在
up
座
one
的
day
诸
and
位
know，how to defraud the U.S. capital markets.
他
They are
们
taught how to
知
do
道如
it by
何
us. Our banks,
来
our institutions.
欺骗我们
My
的这
problem
个
isn't with China
投
or
资者。
Chinese. It is with
我并不是对
American institutions,
中国或中国人
American
有
banks,
一种
Chinese institutions, Chinese
偏
banks
见，
that are committing fraud. That's not a people problem. That's an
是
institution
中国的政府和中国
problem.
的
Nobody goes to jail for it.
银
Not
行
one
在
has ever gone to jail for it. And they
实
need
施
to
这
do
些
that.
欺诈行为，但是
China
没有一个人为
understands.
此
Here's the cultural
受到
difference.
审判、
It's not in
审
the
判或者制裁。
math is science.
所
The
以
problem is accounting
这
is an
不
art.
是
And they have some Jackson Pollocks over there. So the culture difference that we do
这不
have,
光是一些数字的游戏，因为他们可以
they see themselves
在
as circular
账目
units.
上作假
Their，family is the tightest circle.
所
Their
以
village
他们有
is
这
an outer
个
circle. Their
这种
province is an
圈
outer
子，
circle
他们
of
的
province.
家
And then
庭、
their
他们
country.
的
They don't have a
村
whistleblower
落，
program in China. A
还有
whistleblower
他
program
们
is
的
like
国家
you'll hear the，
他们并没
whistleblower
有
as the
这
bullet goes through their
个
head. They don't tell on each other.
这种
So they have that circular, tight-knit group. When they circle their wagons,
这种
the United States used to be that way.
告密者
Now,
的这
when we
种
circle our wagons,
保护，如果
we're
你
here, they're there.
把
They
这
put a
个
bag of
公
money
司
in the
作
middle,
假的这
our
个
wagons break.
丑
So I'm an average
丑闻
citizen
暴露
saying
出来，你可
that
能
we can all
就
do
遭
more.
受
We've
要
exposed
吃一颗
$15
子弹。
billion. We'll continue to do that. We are actively telling the truth every day
我们
through freedom of speech.
每天
And I
都
would ask you
在
to join me in doing the same.
揭
And
示
to
真
never
相，因为
be
我们
afraid
有言
to
论
say
自
you're
由，
proud to be an American and you're proud to
所
protect
以
your country. Thank you very much.
我们要说我们很自豪作为一个美国人，因为我们有言论自由。好，这位演讲结
Amen to
束。
that. As the cleanup batter
我
in this
同意
impressive
他所
program,
说的。
I'm very pleased to introduce another old friend, well known again to this community,
我
not least
要介
because
绍
of his
下一位
time working for Goldman Sachs.
朋友，
Subsequently, he has played a major role
他
at the
曾
national
在高
political
盛
level,
任职，
notably as the chairman of Breitbart, and subsequently as the
他是 Breitbart
chairman
的
of
主
the
席，
Trump 2016
并
campaign.
且是川
And
普
subsequent
竞
to
选
that,
的
as
负
the
责人，
strategic advisor to President Trump in the White House.
并且成为
He needs no further
白宫
introduction
的
other than to say a
首
great
席
welcome to
策略
Steve
师。
Bannon.
让我们欢迎班农先生。
Thank you, Frank.
谢谢
One of the
Frank
first things I want to do is get our nomenclature,
我
our
要
vernacular correct. The most important audience we have here today is
告
not
诉
the
大
illustrious
家，
folks
今
on
天
Wall Street,
最重要的
financial community, the national
来
security
宾并
folks
不
that have joined us.
是
It's not
这
the people
些
at CNBC and Yahoo Finance, all the great TV networks and channels we have here today
很
that have
重要的
lit
人
the
物。
world, Bloomberg,
最重要的人物并不是这些很知名的在
but
座
we have today
的
Miles Kwok
各
and
位。
Glow
我们
Media.
今天
And Glow Media
我们
is
有
beaming this in right
郭文
now
贵和郭
to
media，
China.
郭
The most
media
important
现
audience
在
we
正向
have is the
全
Chinese
球
people.
播放。
The
最
committing of
重
the
要的
present danger,
是
everything
中国
we're
人
talking
民。
about today
这当委会我们所说的，并不是有关中国人对付中国人民，而是要拯救中国人民，因为作恶的是共产党，是这个绑架了中国，在危险的道路上飞奔。刚才 Gordon 讲的这个 Westphalia 这个系统，这个系统和共产党的这个系统是不可共存的，因为是一半奴隶，一半是自由人，所以这个奴隶是那些中国的老百姓，是中国的支柱，但是他们被共产党这个盗国贼集团绑架，但是他们共产党得到了西方国家的资助，并且得到了由西方来的技术。今天最震惊的事情，我要简短的讲一下。他们今天最震惊的事情，这是现在是2019年的4月，我们将被后人评判。这同样的欺骗一直在进行。在座的很多人都知道，因为我当初在60和70年代，我们的最大的威胁是苏联。那个时候，有些美国人认为自己是正在衰落的一个国家。那时候就有人认为苏联的社会制度更好。但是当年的党委会的成员，他们站出来，像 Andy Marshall 刚去世的那位过去党委会的成员，他们重组了党委会。那时候70年代，他们就看苏联的数字，所以他们发现苏联的经济是他们号称的一半。
And guess who had part of that convincing? Henry Kissinger? Was it Alison Graham?
所以基辛格等等，当初有人还是认为苏联更强大。那现在历史又在重演，中国并不是在一个上升的力量，美国也不是一个正在衰落的国家。我们有着自由和 Westphalia， 就是国家主权的这个公约。如果给人民自由，他们会。他们会创造美好的未来，但是你如果束缚他们，他们就成了奴隶。所以 Bass 这样的，他们计算了一下中国的经济。你以为华尔街不知道中国经济的真相吗？在2017年有两次演讲，一个是达沃斯，一个是在国会山。习主席去达沃斯，他被奉为拯救全球经济一体化的英雄。他们说习近平是英雄，但是这些平民运动的这个倡导者、拥护者要被达沃斯的人批评。那你以为这些达沃斯的人不知道现状吗？就是真相吗？因为他们有更高的目的，那就是赚钱。所以你们必须面对这个选择，你们要做出正确的选择。所以，我非常荣幸能够祝他当时就职典礼上讲的有关美国的这个停滞不前，但是他现在要采取行动。现在的贸易谈判并不是一个贸易的协定，因为现在我们正处于战争状态。他们用超限战对付我们。超限战是在90年代末写的一本书，那是一种战术著作。他们列举了详细的计划来对付美国。如何摧毁西方？有情报。军事、经济等等6个方面的战争，他们知道如何攻击我们。但是我们能够战胜他们。我们可以通过信息和经济战来打倒他们。中共一直在跟我们进行经济战，已经有了20年之久。我们并不是一个正在衰落的力量。所以我同意郭登说的话，我们必须强硬起来，必须采取果断的行动，更有力的行动，更强烈的行动。首先，我们必须打破这个防火墙。这个防火墙不光是用西方的技术，并且是用了西方的公司。发生了什么？以前是一带一路，你看现在他们改了一个名称，他们现在也不提中国制造2025所以你跟华为打交道就是跟解放军做交易。 因为华为就是解放军。
You are the People's Liberation Army. Here's the dilemma. The dilemma is the burden is upon us.
所以
Not just the average citizens, it's our
责任在我们肩上。
If we acted as
是我们的这个
If we acted as
系统
fiduciaries, the underpinning of the entire financial system, why are our capital markets so robust?
为
It's
什么
about our fiduciary
我们的
responsibility. Here
经
is
济
why Trump and here's why
这
the
么
deplorables
强
are so
壮？
angry. Here's why they elected Donald Trump.
这是为什么
They
我们这
understand
些
the factories
普通
get
民众
shipped
为
to
什么
China. They understand the jobs went, and as JP
愤怒？因为
shares
我们的
hillbilly
工作
elegies,
都被
the
运到了
opioids,
中
that's what
国，
the opioid crisis is.
并
Tariffs
且
are not about a
他们
tax. Tariffs are about
还
self-esteem
把
and dignity. It's about
病
bringing
毒之类
manufacturing
贩
jobs
卖
back.
到美国。我们要我们的制造业工作的回归。
As you peel it back,
更重要的
the
是，
deplorables
如果你
pension
看
funds financed it.
这些美
This is
国
a
的
deep tragedy. The
大
greatest
众，他们
power
的
on
退休
earth,
基金
the
的
working
钱
people that are the
来
backbone of
正在支持中共。
that hold our civic society together, that coach Little League, that build the churches, that serve in
所
those
以
desolate battlefields of Iraq and Afghanistan.
我们这些退休基金的
I was a junior
拥有
officer when I
者
was on a destroyer in the South China Sea. A South China Sea then
是
that we were hunting for carrier battle groups to protect.
美国
and hunting
的
for
各
Soviet
行各业的
submarines.
人。
Never,
我当年
ever
在
envisioning
军队服役，
that an American
我当
government
年
would look the other way when
从来
stationary
没有
aircraft carriers essentially were built
想
to
象
take away
到
the freedom of
美
navigation
国的政府
and the lifeline
居然
to our
忽略
allies
中
in
共的
Taiwan
威
and
胁，
South Korea and Japan.
并且当年背弃了台湾这样的盟友。所以我要以这个作为结尾。
Open his presidential campaign today. America's an idea.
拜
America's
登
not an idea. America's a country.
他
America's a country with a
在
border
那
and
个
a
竞
people
选的这个
and a
宣告
land.
中说，
And
美国
very
是一
empowering
个
ideas that got
精
from the
神，
Judeo-Christian
一个理想，
West that
说
have
我
been
们不
passed
是一
down
个
from
光是一
millennia.
个这个理想。
So they got the 20
我们
candidates. Here's
是
the goal. New York Post provides us today. The 20 candidates, right?
他们
What their
有
poll numbers
现
are,
在
what
有
they're running on. And Joe's
有关
gonna
这
add to
个
this.
下届总统竞选的候选
And
人，
they talk about what they stand for. And I happen to watch,
他
I don't know
们
if you did,
讲
I
了
watched all 5 hours the other night
他们
of
的
the CNN town halls.
政治立场，
You know what's almost never mentioned?
我也看了他们所讲的
This is the greatest，
但是他们没有一位提到中国
This。makes the Soviet Union.
这
Soviet
是
Union is
中
a
国
country.
现
Russia's
在
a
是
country
我
a
们
day the size of
目
New
前
York
最
State.
大的威胁。
When Andy Marshall and Bill Casey did the analysis for Ronald Reagan,
俄国的经
it
济
was the size of
还不
California
如
that changed the entire dynamic
纽约
of the
州
Cold
的
War.
规模。
That was the Reagan defense bill. We were never going to build a 600-ship Navy. I was the special assistant to the chief of naval operation. It was economic warfare to bury them, as was
当
Star
年
Wars.
对
That's what Roger Robinson did.
对付苏联也
He's
是
one
用
of
的
the
经
unknown
济战
heroes。and not well enough known. He worked on that. That's how we destroyed the Soviet Union. By the way, CIA still got it wrong. Said take 50 years.
我
It took
们
8.
就是通过
Why? Because what did Reagan say?
经济战打不
We
垮的苏
win
联。
and they lose. And that's
有
what
人
the
曾经
Committee
预
on
测
President
50年，
Dangerous.
但实际
And
上
all
只用了
this,
8
I'm
年就
gonna
打
wrap up shortly.
垮了苏联。
They go through what everybody stands for. And I quote from the New York Post.
所以
Somebody's running
我
on
用《
mindfulness.
纽约时报》的这个引述，
And that is not Marianne Williamson. She's running on at least bringing positivity. I might note to the New York Post, by the way, you've swapped the picture. This is actually Swalwell. That's Tim Ryan. Your
所以他
campaign's
说
going
这
poorly
个
when the New York Post gets your
报纸上这个照
pictures
片
wrong.
弄反了。
But it's really about Joe. It's not about this group. It's Joe Biden. Joe
是
Biden is
关
going to be in
Joe
Pennsylvania today
Biden
because Joe
他
Biden
要
is
去
much more woke
宾州，
than Hillary Clinton about what it's going to take to defeat Donald Trump. He's got to go out to, because Joe's going to start with all the union support. So
他
Joe's got
想
to go out to
在
Western
下次竞
Pennsylvania,
选击败
understanding
川
Pennsylvania,
普，
Ohio, Iowa,
他知道
Wisconsin,
宾州这些
Michigan, and Minnesota, that upper fortress
美国的
of the
心
Trump
脏
movement,
地
which
带，
delivered this stunning victory in
那个
2016.
当年是投票给川普的，所以他要对那些州的人宣讲他的政治观点。
2013 on Air Force Two, I think he took his son over there. 10 days later, they signed $1 billion deal for their private hedge fund.
所以他当年 Joe Biden 他去了中国，然后回来以后，他的儿子就签署了一个巨额的商业协定，跟中共有关的公司签订了商业协定，并且 Joe Biden 应该告诉那些炼钢厂的工人们，是川普增加了钢铁的进口税，但是川普却被嘲笑。Joe Biden 曾是副总统，当了8年。当年奥巴马做了什么呢？他只派了一支部队到澳大利亚，那就是他的那个战略目标转移到亚洲做的唯一的一件事。所以 Joe Biden 必须回答这样的问题：你什么知道多少？你们的家族从中国获得了多少好处？从中国的这个惨无人道的这个政权获得了多少好处？好，结束。
How's that for a cleanup batter? Well done. Don't go away.
好，
I want
好，非常棒的演讲。
And we'll take your questions if you will do me a favor.
所以我们要所有的人到前面来，我们进行问答。请讲一下您来自的，介绍一下你自己，再问问题啊。好，请这几位到前面来。有问题吗？这位先生。
Go ahead. Identify yourself.
Jeff Weisenfeld. Any of the Center for Security Policy. Any of those of you who are most familiar with capital markets in the presentation. As you may know, China shares.
在中国的这些在美国的上市。他们这些 今天早晨谈到了很多美国对中国上市公司的投资，这些会对我们的投资者造成损失。我们回答现在是我们并没有全面的调查这些欺诈行为。我们关注的一个就是关于国家安全的威胁，还有是对人权的威胁，这是我们专注的领域。我们想介绍一下
due diligence being performed on what are decidedly material risk
有关
Now that's evident
这个
when you look at
不同领域的这些
profiles that I was talking about, including the Hike Visions
分析
vis-a-vis concentration camps in Xinjiang.
比如说
this is not
有
what
关
the American
新
people
疆维吾
had in
族
mind.
的
And I would only turn it over to others to talk
学习营
to other glaring problems. And hopefully those are being detected as well. But I can tell you
所以这些都是在关注之列。
glaring blind spot here, and that's in these
大家学习营其实就是集中营啊，在新疆的集中。
It's one thing that I think all of us forgot to mention, and it hits on something that both Roger and Dan talked about. You know, today, the Chinese companies that list ADR lists in the U.S., level 1, level 2, level 3,
中国在美国的上市公司，他们有一些上市的要求，但是中国的银行可以在美国卖他们中国公司的股票，他们可以假造一些表面上光鲜的财务报表。而且现在也没有全面的审计对于这些中共上市公司，所以 SEC 必须马上开始对这些上市公司的审计。这是让人无法置信的。美国的投资者竟然被这些欺诈行为的公司如此的欺骗。我有众多的欺诈行为的证据。我都会把它们公布出来，但是在中国，你的欺诈行为不会把你送入监狱，你反而会得到盈利。所以有很多来美国上市的公司，他们就是用这种欺诈行为圈钱。
We have a lot of smart people on Wall Street.
我们有很多聪明人在华尔街。如何让这些华尔街的人明白美国第一？如何让他们明白他们今天所赚来的钱？让他们如何明白这个逐利，这种贪婪无止的逐利，到底要把他们带到哪里
？The problem is that the U.S.-China economic relationship is to a great extent the
这中美的这个经济关系。
America's best performing companies in terms of market cap, big tech, are largely software companies.
所以美国的这些
made possible by cheap Asian electronics, so it's in the interest of the Facebooks and the
这些公司当时还有这种高科技公司都是得益于这个亚洲的廉价劳动力，所以中国有大量的这个廉价劳动力，也向美国倾销他们这些廉价的科技产品，比如说电脑之类的。
Going into any kind of hardware production, much less investment in the United States. So we're losing our semiconductor industry. What will it take?
所以我们现在在失去我们的芯片产业。
Back in the White House, I think the president would have to get the chairman of the top 10 tech companies into
总统要把这个
you boys have $1 trillion
排前10位的这个科技公司召集起来。 讨论这个问题。说你如何解决这个问题，就要靠我们的总统，就是要强迫这些高科技公司把他们的产业移回美国。我认为。 美国人向来都是无视这个危机，到有了严重的结果。
你
知道在南海和东海，我们有这些军事上的这些摩擦等等，曾经有过几乎导致美国伤亡的这种事件。
Okay? Come on. This is the open secret. Bob Davis of the Wall Street Journal had an article 3 or 4 weeks ago about the pressure on President Trump coming from the hedge fund community.
他说这个对冲基金这个，他们就是
But leave aside any structural changes to the Chinese economy.
他们就威胁这个
forced technology transfers and the subsidies.
这个对冲基金的人，他就是替中共在说话。
China's greatest export, the CCP's greatest export, is deflation and overcapacity. The reason Japanese industrial production can't get up.
出产的就是这个过剩的产业，
financed by the West that the Chinese.
就像当年日本一样。
These people are unregistered foreign.
所以这些替中共说话的人都应该注册成为外国代理人、外国政府代理人。
On the Russia hoax investigation of President Trump about a nation that is
通俄门的调查的时候，这么多人都关注这个俄国，因为虽然他们的经济就像那个纽约州的经济的规模，还有这些华尔街的人每天都催着白宫跟中国签订贸易协定，而且他们都不让我们提这个中国防火墙。这个中共的防火墙并不在这个贸易谈判的条例上，所以。 我们必须把Joe Biden这样的人让他们负起责任来。问题是我们这个美国的银行知道明白了。
They're domiciled here, and our laws protect them. They should be here.
他们
They are beholden to their shareholders.
就中国的上市公司可以来到美国，而且我们的法律还保护他们。
The fact that they're American is incidental and probably because they need the protection of the United
因为
States. But they're beholden to their shareholders, and if that's coming out of China, which it is,
这个公司来自中国
a political arm for China and have been.
那他们就应该被正确对待。 我觉得有一个巨大的分离，一方面就是这个基金的运作者，还有这个基金的这个持有者，就是美国的大众。那些基金的运作者。 我们对他们一无，作为投资者，对于这些退休基金的拥有者，我们对这些投资的项目几乎一无所知。所以，这个言论自由非常重要，信息的公开也非常的重要。 知道在中国，他们用这个监视这些维吾尔族。如果你把这个列入考虑之内，就是得把人权的这个问题列入考虑之列，还再加上其他的军事方面的，所以这些 这是有跟中国有关的这种投资项目，他们喜欢投资中国，所以我们必须问这些基金的管理者，这是我们的钱，所以我们必须仔细看一下这些这些投资中国的基金项目的增长率。如果我们以现在的速度进行下去的话，那这个美国的投资者2-3年后，也许就突然发现他的17%到20%的退休基金都投资到中国了，并且中国大概有200万人在美国游说。如果他们发现任何对中国的制裁都会影响到他们的这个投资，那你会看到这些永不停止的游说，就是为中共说好话，因为这个投资产品。
Larry Kudlow and others in the administration predicting that a finalized trade agreement is likely soon. You've made it clear that at least most of you were opposed to that agreement, but can you give us some more specifics on what Steve Mnuchin and others who are going to China soon should actually ask for? Give us some change.
你们要做出什么样的？这个是问题啊，说你们准备做出什么样的改变？因为那个财政部长。
Thou shalt not steal and not go to jail.
Mnuchin 要去中国。
如
果我们这是回答，如果我们从中国偷盗，我们一定会受到惩罚。
Have stolen from Chinese citizens, and our government has gotten that money back and made those Chinese citizens whole, because that's what we should do.
我们
But they should do the same, and that's a bilateral
必须平等的
that could make that happen. And we could get our money back.
Betsy,
对等的
we have heard that the discussions in
建立
Beijing
对等的关系
in about a week or so are going to be about enforcement mechanism. And essentially, we have heard that this enforcement mechanism is going to be an established dialogue procedure. In other words, an office in Washington and another office in Beijing.
听说这个是
Chinese officials will talk to each other.
他们会建立这个对话，并且这个贸易谈判有点停滞不前。那每次这个都给中共机会。
That's the question of stalling. There is some talk about how China will promise not to retaliate if we issue some sort of cost for China violating a trade deal. So China violates the trade deal, we impose some costs, China agrees not to retaliate.
他们承诺不报复。
That's just fantasy land. I mean, I don't understand how that's
我不知道
the
这
only thing
是
that's going to be
如何
enforceable
才能
is a
够
tariff which is
确
not
定
25%, but
可以做到。
250%. We have to impose the costs that are higher than the benefits China gets
我们
from
必
stealing
须
U.S. technology.
为了
Whatever that number
让
is,
这个
that's what we need to do in terms of tariffs and other costs.
President Trump
贸易
reiterated
平
this
衡，
in the
我们
State
必
of the
须要
Union when he said, "There will be, I will bring
要超过
structural
这个
changes to the relationship we have with the
中
Chinese
国目
economy,
前的
not
贸
just
易
some
顺
deal
差，这
that
样的
buys
话
$2 trillion
才
worth
可以
of
平衡
soybeans."
贸易。
Those 6 verticals. That is the fundamental restructuring of the Chinese economy. This is not a
所
trade
以
deal. It's not a trade
班
negotiation.
农说这
This
不
is
是
an
一
armistice
个
on an economic
贸易的
war
协定，
that the Chinese
这是
Communist
一
Party, the
个
radical cadre has run
经
against the
济
industrial
战争。
democracies for 20 years. This is an armistice. In that armistice, the two
这
central
两个
points, Gordon's
重
exactly
点就
correct.
是，
If we do what's been written in the
如
paper,
果
it's nothing
我
more
们
than
只
the
是
Clinton,
按
Bush,
照这个
Obama
协
strategic
定，
economic
那么我们
dialogue. That's just going to tap us along as they
会
continue to do it. You have to have monitoring.
这
The
可
key
能
is monitoring.
重蹈覆辙。
Real-time
我们必
monitoring and
须
then
要有
execution and
监
punitive
管，并
tariffs.
且是
Tariffs that stay on and then tariffs that really launch off of
确
anything that
定
monitoring shows
这
you.
个实施
Of the 6 verticals, which are, forced technology transfer,
这
intellectual
些
property theft, cyber intrusion, currency manipulation, non-trade barriers, and
让
subsidies to
中共停
state-owned
止
industries.
目前
The
正
two
在
keys are forced
进
technology
行的这些不
transfer
合理的
and
行为，
subsidies to state-owned
像
industries. Until we get
强
a
迫的技术
monitoring,
转
this is what
移、
David Goldman said.
操纵汇率
Their
等等。
economic model is radically different.
现在
They look at themselves as the center of a
中
manufacturing
国
empire that
认
one
为
belt,
自
one
己
road
是制造业的
consolidates on the
中
Eurasian
心，
landmass through sub-Saharan Africa to the
他们
Caribbean
这
and
个
Latin
“一带一
America.
路”就是
Made
把
in China
全球的这
2025
个都联
leapfrogs
系起
us
来，
with AI, robotics, and
并且
artificial
要
intelligence
加
and,
入
and,
这
and,
个
and software and
人
chip
工智
design.
能、
And then Huawei
芯
rolls
片
out 5G, which takes quantum
再加上
computing to
华
the
为
next
的
level.
这个
That all
5G
has to
技
be in
术
here. Can it get done in the next couple of weeks?
他
Absolutely
们
not. But that's why this is an armistice. And you
是
have
有
someone
这
like
个
Bob
全
Lighthizer,
球的这个
the partner
策
of
略，
Stad Narf, who's at the tip of the spear of this, and
所
Peter
以
Navarro.
大家必须看到这
Their
个
voices are heard and Lighthizer's allowed
整
to
个的
get
这
this
个
deal. It's one
威
of the
胁。
reasons I believe that Prime Minister Abe is coming on a short trip and a turnaround this
所
weekend
以
in the White House, not just with the Japanese deal. I think
日
it's
本的这个安倍
to
首
raise the
相
alarm
又要
about
来
a
访问美
non-structural
国，
deal with China could
所以
hold.
我们必须
Very briefly,
达成一个有效的协议，不能再像过去那样了。
technology that American companies lining up to give it away to them, per Steve's point about the fifth column in the United States. I think we need radical export
所以我
controls
们
that
必须
prevent
有这个
Boeing from selling satellites to China, as the Wall Street Journal
有
reported.
出口的限
earlier this
制
week, used，
这样就
for
不会让
surveillance,
波音把他们的
preventing
卫
intel
星也
that
出
is
租
research centered
或者
China,
出
which
售，
advances Chinese skills and so forth. So I think putting our own house
所以
in
我们
order
必须
would be
先
an
把
urgent
自己
thing to
的
do.
能
In
做
terms
的
of large tariffs, we've got a simple
美国这
problem.
一
We
方的
don't
这
produce
些
this stuff
规范
anymore.
好，
Our biggest imports from China are smartphones, computers, tablets, and so forth. If we put on
所以
huge tariffs across the board,
再把这
Americans
个
will
中国
start
来的
paying a lot
电
more
子产品
for
增
those
加
products, and
高
in
关
that
税，
it might be a reaction. President Trump might not be reelected.
所
So I
以
agree with Steve. This is an armistice. We're
如
not
果
going to win
我 们
everything in this round. We
做
have
所
to
有想
gauge
做的
the
事
profit
情，
and loss, benefit
川普总
and
统可能并不
cost,
能赢得下
and
次的
move
大
on
选，
to the strategically decisive things which are going to win the long war.
所以我们必须有效的选择，有策略的选择我们
This
的
gentleman right here.
行动步骤。
Bow tie. Stand by for a microphone. Identify yourself, please.
好，请介绍一下
John
你
French.
自己。
Nobody has made any comments on the
没有
question
人
of
提
global
及
gold China is squirreling away. What is your view if the Chinese at some point decide to back the yuan with gold and turn it into the reserve currency of the world?
有关中国货币全球化，
You can't turn your
没有
currency
人
into a reserve currency. Would you put your checking account in RMB? I wouldn't.
你会把你的
dollars, including the Chinese.
存款
Now,
都
the Chinese are going to
换
bribe our
成
financial
人民币吗？
industry
我是
by
不会
giving
那么
them
做
big
的，这是回
franchises
答。
in China. UBS has already gotten a bank license. Allianz Insurance has already gotten an insurance license.
所以有些公司
will definitely be in there. All of the investment
银
companies,
行、投资
BlackRock
公
will be
司
in there.
正在
And at that point, they hope over perhaps 10 years to
申
develop a
请
capital market
一些
sufficiently
执照，
integrated with the West
所以
that would
他
allow
们
them
希望中共希望
develop
在
a reserve currency.
大约在10年以
So
后
we
把
should be
它
careful
人民
about
币
what we
变
wish
成
for.
了
There's some aspects of Chinese
全
transparency
球
that
性的
have
货
them
币，
bribe to our corporate sector and advance their own agenda.
他们这是他们这个长远计划的一部分。
When you look at the money supply in
这
China,
Carl Bass 吧
Chinese
他说
M2,
如果你看这
Chinese
个
M2 at the end of
中
last year
共这
hit,
个
used dollars hit 32
货币
trillion
的发
dollars
行，
on an economy of 12.
他们是绝对是超
They've
发
printed
的。
more money than anyone ever has. Think about the U.S. debate is whether or not the Fed's balance sheet is incredibly too large at somewhere between 3 and 3.5 trillion. The Chinese have printed $32 trillion worth of their currency domestically, and they've held the price levels down on everything but real estate. And so, look, if they ever open their capital account, you know, I don't know how many rich Chinese people you know that can't wait to buy more Chinese real estate and send their kids to school in China. But what's going to happen is the currency would immediately suffer a massive devaluation. So this idea of somehow finding 30, first of all, the amount of gold ever mined in world history to date is about 7 trillion. And a lot of it's been used in industrial applications. Some of it's been used for dowry and jewelry. But they have $32 trillion worth of currency today, and they're growing at 3 or 4 trillion a year. There isn't enough gold in the world
他们大量的印发货币，世界上没有足够的黄金能够支持他们这个大量超发的货币。所以他的结论是不可能成为国际储备货币。
To exert more pressure and to collaborate more clearly with them. They're our friends.
Well, I think it's a matter of an uncertain trumpet. The Japanese and the South Koreans are massive investors in Southeast Asia.
这个问题是有关日本的。
Than China does.
他说，
certainly have the capacity
可能是对比。
technology. If we united with them, India and other countries, to create our own Belt and Road Initiative, pursue it seriously, I think we could chop up China's efforts in most of the world.
他说我们可以阻止这个中共的这个“一带一路”的这个进行。
So I think the answer is
是
Japanese have
日
looked
本
at us prevaricate, pivot to Asia,
对这个美国政策的看法。
Marine Brigade in Darwin, Australia, and wondering whether we're serious.
他们
They've got to live next to China.
日本人还在想，这是美国人是不是很严肃的、认真的在做这件事情？因为日本每天都要面对这个中国的这个威胁。
Just a word about the Japanese.
有关日本，
For over 40 years and
这是另外一个回答的。他说我
You know how many Chinese companies
你知道有多少中国公司在日本上市吗？
I think the last count was 4.
上次计算的只有4个，
over 650.
但这边有
In part because if that's the rigor
650个公司在美上市。
The rigor of what it takes to get onto their market versus the free lunch program that largely exists here, particularly in the OTC, the over-the-counter.
所以，在美国上市是太容易了，所以大部分中国公司都到美国来上市，并且日本他们仔细的调查这些有问题的中国公司。
Never came to fruition, had safety problems, quality control, not just
他们不光看这些
human rights and national security
人权或者这些方面的问题，他们还日本的对上市公司的要求更严，他们检查的更严。
Through exposing the Chinese for what they're really up to, which has been such a powerful theme this morning. So I think the Japanese are.
所以我认为日本对于中国的这个审查，他们比我们做得更好。所以我们可以从日本那儿学很多，并且日本跟我们站在一起。
I don't see any daylight between Japan and the United States today.
Suffice it to say, they get that there's a present danger in the neighborhood. Yes, sir.
I'm David Braunschweig. I have one word and 2 questions. The one word that I haven't heard today is
一个问题，就是台湾我们还没有听到被提及。
What is
the likelihood and the timing of China enacting its one country, two systems with China, meaning with Taiwan,
中共
meaning
会什么时候
invading Taiwan.
也开始对
And the
台
second
湾
question
进
is,
行
what
一国
will
两制
America
呢？
do about it?
Those are absolutely
这是
critical
很重要
questions
的问题。
because for us, Taiwan is in the center of our Western
对
defense
台湾，这
perimeter.
是个很好的问题，这是
You know,
回
we've
答，
drawn
是
our Western defense perimeter not
台湾
only
是一个很
California
重要
or
的
even
话
Guam,
题，
but off
也
the
是
coast of
在
Asia.
美国保护之列。
Xi Jinping has been talking with increasing frequency about forceful measures to take Taiwan. And some people have said that he's even set a
所以
deadline
有
of
人说，
2020, which
中
might
共
be
设了一
too
个
late.
2020作为
Nonetheless,
这
as you
个
see internal distress inside of China,
期限来收复
the
台湾。
idea of taking over Taiwan by force if necessary becomes much more
所以
attractive
对
to
习
Xi Jinping,
习
who
近
is in a
平来
political
说，武
position where
力统一台湾是一个
he's
非
put
常
himself in a
有
point
吸
where
引
he's
力
in
的选
jeopardy
择。
because he has deinstitutionalized the Communist Party, created a lot
所
of
以
enemies, and so misadventure abroad actually makes
中
quite some sense
共
for him politically.
树了很多敌人，
I think that we've got to understand
我们
that
必须知
we're
道，
facing a question not just 10 or 15
我
years
们
down
并
the
不
road,
是
but facing a question in the next couple of
并不
years.
是面对一
As to the point of what
个
the
十
United
几
States will
年
do,
之远的
that's
之
always
久的
been
问题，
very
而是
difficult for
现
others
在
to
2-3
understand.
年的问
You know,
题，
Dean
就是
Acheson
2-3
in
年内就要
1950
发生的
put
事件。
South Korea outside of the U.S. defense perimeter, and what did we do? We defended it, despite what he said. April Glaspie, the American ambassador to Iraq, told Saddam Hussein just 8 days before he invaded Kuwait that the United States wasn't going to be concerned about what she called intra-Arab disputes. What did we do? We defended
所以
Kuwait.
在那个海湾战
I
争
think
之
that
前，这
unfortunately
个
we may have the same situation where we leave in the minds of the Chinese that we are not
我
going
们
to do
当初
anything,
并没有
and that then
说告
when
诉伊
something
拉
does
克我们
occur,
要保护科威特，但是一旦伊拉克
that's the
进
reason
攻了
why
科
the
威
Committee
特，
on
美国马
Presentation is
上
so
出兵
important,。is to marshal American will so that Xi Jinping
所以我
never
们
thinks
从来
that he can use force against any
类
of
似
his
情况
neighbors,
也
including Taiwan.
Hong Kong,
对
South Korea,
香港这个台
Japan,
湾这个
and
也是
especially Taiwan are
同样
absolutely
的。
central. The 2020 election season, before we even get to Iowa, we start with, I think, a more important election. That's Taiwan.
所以在2020年的1月，我们将有一个很重要的选举，就
with the
是
CCP dropped out
台
I think
湾
yesterday
在1月份
for
的
the
大选。
KMT primary
因
because
为
Terry Guo of
Terry
Foxconn,
郭就是郭
you know, is now running. He got inspired by the
这个
goddess Mazu
智
last
昌的
week
这个
and said he's going to run for the
老板，他现在
KMT
要竞选
against either President Tsai
台湾的这个
or
总
William
统。
Lay, one of the two candidates of the DPP, or the
郭台
DPP
铭
is all
要
about
竞选
independence,
台湾
all
总
about a
统。
relationship and partnership with the United States. And I think we have to ask the question, just like we have to ask
所以
Joe
我
Biden
必
and
须
his
问
family, what is your relationship with Chinese financial institutions?
Joe
What is your
Biden
relationship
这
with
个
senior members of the
正
CCP?
在
What were
宣
you doing in
布竞选总统的
2013
人
on
必
Air
须
Force
解释
Two
清
with
楚
your son?
他们
At the same
在
time, we were
家族
allowing,
在中
you
国
were
的
allowing,
利
as
益。
Vice President of the United States, China to build these islands, these
那中
stationary
国
aircraft
在
carriers,
南
because
中
that's
国
what they are
海
in the
建
South
了那么
China
多
Sea,
人工
and
岛
basically had the
屿，
biggest give up of the West since Munich. We
所
have
以
to ask Terry Go the exact
我们必须
same
问郭台铭
question
同样的问题，
because they're not going to
因
need to
为
invade.
他们不需要
They could do this through the ballot box, and they could do this through a
武
massive
力进
influence
攻
operation
台，因
that
为
is
他们
going on
可
in
以
Taiwan
通过
right
大
now.
选
And
来
Terry Go
占
of
领台湾。
Foxconn, to me, has to answer the same questions.
所
What is
以
your
我们必须
relationship with
问
the
郭台铭这
CCP?
样的
What
问
financing
题，
have
就
you
是
gotten from
你
the
跟中
CCP?
国，你跟
What
中
you
国
have
的
in mainland
关系
China?
到
How
底
does
是
it
什么？
operate with the CCP? And the people of Taiwan, I think, are
所
owed
以
those
台湾人
answers.
民必
And
须
this
得到
campaign in
这种答
2020 for
案
the。presidency of Taiwan is going to be the kickoff to the presidential campaign of 2020 in the United States, because China, in the issue of
因
China
为
and the West, in particular the relationship of the United States and China, to me, is going to be the
这
single
个
most important
台湾
topic that's
问题
discussed.
是一个非
Not
常重要的
wellness,
话题。
not positivity, not mindfulness, not all these things that the
不
Democrats
是
are talking
像
about
民主
today, but the
党想
hard
所
reality
说
of
的这
geopolitics.
个那么轻描淡写所讲的。
Yes, sir. Right here.
Thanks. Just to follow up, my name is Brian McCarthy. A follow up on.
我是 Brian McCarthy， 我现在是问问题，说班农先生刚才提到了这个华尔街跟中共的这些关系。
Research from 4 or 5 banks saying the exact same thing
那
this morning. The chief China economist of all the big global banks is called into the PBOC.
各大银行的这个中国研究专家，
So investor relations is a nice way to put it. They're literally an extension of the Chinese propaganda effort. And my question would be on that one is
经常可能也是成为中共的大外宣一部分。所以这个 SEC 就是美国的这个证券监管部门，他们在哪里，他们应该采取措施。
But this is actually a really critical strategy for China to survive the next
所以现在
China is desperate for
中国正是有这个美元的危机，它必在今后的3-5年是非常的
every dollar that comes in, someone's ready to take it down and get it out.
要
So, you know, you're talking hundreds of
美元
billions of
有
dollars being
大量的
forced
需
into
求。
China into markets that, because of the fact that Chinese
因
people
为
cannot get out, are by
中国
definition overvalued and at a disequilibrium. So
这
where
个
are the pension
投资
regulators
不
and
能
others who are supposed to be
随意
keeping
的
an eye
来
on
到国外，所以
responsibility that
中国
these
本地的
index
这个
providers have to
产
their
业
clients and the ultimate
被过高
Before
的
Kyle jumps
估
in, we're going
计
to，sign you up. This is why we formed the committee.
所以这正是这是回答，这正是我们这个当委会的目标，给成立的这个目的，教育这个大众，并且
When you look at across the Wall Street banks and you look at the joint
让
ventures
更
that
多的
even
人知
the
道这
US
个
banks have
危
with
险。
Asian banks. The figureheads atop of those JVs are all members of the Chinese Communist Party. There should be some Reg FD disclosure out there, just
所
like
以
there
必
is on
须
analysts owning something.
有
So if you're
更
going to
多
read a piece
的
of research, it should say, you know, the vice chairman
信
of the
息
bank
的
is a member of the CCP, and he
公
actually
布
edited
对
this
中
report.
共中
Because
共
it
的
happens.
上市公
And
司
when we talk with chief economists about the very specific issues we talk about across Asia, I know some of them very well personally. You know, they'll call me and they'll say, you know, this is the real deficit, this is the augmented deficit. And I said, well, why don't you put that in your report? He says, well, they would never let that get
他说
in the
有人
report.
告诉
But
他
you
这
are
是美国
Bank
中
XYZ
国
here in the United States says, yeah, but our
经
chairman
济的真实
Mesa
数
is
字，
the
但
CCP
是
member
他们
and
的
wouldn't make it through the
公
edit.
司
And
绝对
it
不会
literally
让他
happens all
把
the
这
time.
个公
So
布
I
出
think
来。
Reg FD disclosures about Communist Party membership
还有这个中国上市公司，他们这个 CEO 的这个党员身份也是必须被披露，并且有相应的措施来对付这样的情形。
Speaking of those banks,
那这有点像指马云哈。
I guess comment something that is also missing from the trade talks is on the
在贸易谈判中缺失的一部分，还有人权问题。这是我的观察，这是问题。第二，我观察到的第二点就是，那那些
But it also means there's a great opportunity in this where people do have, you know, it would be quite easy to have control over where your
这些投资的
did some work with an organization called Just
到中国的这些金融产品，并不是那么明显的让投资者知道他们钱的去向。
And it's so far it's actually pretty unfortunately it's pretty unsuccessful. People don't seem to care how ethical, you know, where their money's going. And I was just wondering
很不幸，人们好像并不是太关注他们的
investors
投资
the human rights atrocities that happen
的走向。
across China and how successful
投资的项目就是具体投资到哪里。
Let me take a quick cut at that. It's one of the reasons, as Steve was just saying, that this new committee on the present danger has been formed.
这正是我们，这是回答，正是我们组成当委会的原因之一。因为我们正处于跟中共的经济战。
In the last one of the featured presentations was from
所以上次我们的党委
talking
会的
about the
这个
concentration camps and what's happening to his people, but also making the broader point that there is a war on faith being mounted
党
by
委会
the
开会的
Chinese
时候，有一
Communist
位
Party.
维吾尔族
We
的
will
发
also
言
be
人，
discussing a number of issues that we just didn't get to today, including what the Chinese are
我
doing
们
in
还没有，
space
今天我们还要
and the mortal threat that
中
poses
共
to us
在
both
太
in
空
terms
所
of our
进行
economy and in
的
terms of our national security.
扩
The
展。
military buildup.
我
We
们也
haven't
没有
really touched on
讲
that at all today.
中
Information
共在
warfare.
军事上的
A little bit
扩
into
张。
that, but we'll do so much more on the second. We've talked about a bit the
我们
China,
刚
South
才讲
China
了一
Sea,
下中国
the
的
the
在
issue of
南海
5G.
的
I had hoped we were going to spend some time
军
talking
事
to you
行
about
动
it because this is an existential
这
threat.
是一个非
Make no
常
mistake about
严
it.
重
In
的
the near term,
威
if it
胁，
turns out that
这是
it's
来自中
a
共的威
Chinese
胁。
owned and operated network, not one in which we are in fact in control of the system for everything from data management and Internet of Things to actually your personal safety. God help us if that's in the hands of the Chinese. So I think unless anyone has anything else they wanted to add, we will wrap it with this further note. Please continue to consult presentdangerchina.org as a resource. We will try to keep you apprised of what we're doing.
我们将结束今天的这个新闻发布会，请来到我们的网站来
Specifically with
查
respect
询
to
更
the
多的
case that's
资
been
料。
made here, that we are enabling the present danger from China with our financial
我
support.
要强调的是，美国正在支持中国，中共来对美国发动这些战争与威胁。
And so must we.
好，谢
Thank
谢
you very
大
much
家
for being with us. Thank you to this great panel.
好，结束了。